Doctors gave a billionaire's disabled son only 4 days to live. But the maid changed everything. 15 world-class specialists had failed. Money, power, connections, none of it mattered. But when a humble hospital custodian sees what billions cannot buy, an impossible miracle begins to unfold. What happens next will restore your faith in humanity. Let me tell you a story about Vincent Ashford, a name that commanded respect in boardrooms across 3 continents. A man whose signature could move millions, whose decisions shaped markets, whose wealth was measured not in millions, but in billions. Vincent had everything. The private jets that whisked him across oceans. The fleet of luxury cars that most people only saw in magazines. A mansion so grand, so magnificent, that visitors often stopped just to stare at its gates. He had built an empire from nothing, clawed his way to the top with determination and brilliance that left competitors in awe. But here's the thing about having everything. Sometimes you realize you have nothing at all. Vincent stood in a sterile hospital room, and all his billions couldn't change what he was seeing. His son, little Oliver, just 18 months old, lay motionless in a bed that seemed far too big for such a tiny body. The boy had the most beautiful auburn hair, reddish blonde like autumn leaves catching sunlight. And his eyes, oh, those eyes used to sparkle like the morning sun breaking through clouds. Used to. Because those eyes hadn't opened in 3 days. 3 days of machines beeping. 3 days of tubes and wires connecting his baby boy to equipment that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. 3 days of watching doctors shake their heads and speak in hushed tones. 3 days of Vincent's world crumbling despite every dollar he threw at the problem. The medical team gathered in Vincent's executive suite on the hospital's top floor. These weren't ordinary doctors. These were the best money could buy. Dr. Peterson led them, a man with silver hair and 30 years of experience saving lives. But when he removed his spectacles and looked at Vincent, there was something in his eyes that money couldn't fix. Defeat. "Mr. Ashford," Dr. Peterson said, and Vincent knew. "You know how you can tell bad news is coming just by the way someone says your name? That's how Dr. Peterson said it. Your son has a rare neurological condition. Extremely rare. His body is shutting down, system by system. We've tried everything we know, every treatment, every protocol. I'm so very sorry, but Oliver has 4 days. Maybe less. 4 days. Vincent's hands started trembling. He gripped the edge of his mahogany desk, the same desk where he'd signed deals worth hundreds of millions. None of those signatures mattered now. None of those victories meant anything. There has to be something, Vincent's voice cracked. He hated how desperate he sounded, how powerless. I'll pay anything. $10 million. $50 million. $100 million. Name your price, any price, and it's yours. Dr. Peterson put his spectacles back on, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. Some things money can't buy, Mr. Ashford. I'm truly, truly sorry. The doctors left. Vincent stood alone in his office, surrounded by awards and photos of business achievements that suddenly felt hollow. Meaningless. He had hired 15 specialists. 15 of the best medical minds in the world. He'd flown in experts from Geneva, from Tokyo, from Stockholm. He'd called research laboratories and offered them blank checks. Just save my son. Please save my son. Nothing worked. You know what's funny? Not funny haha, but funny in that cruel way life sometimes is. Vincent had spent years building his empire, so his family would never want for anything. So they'd be secure, safe, provided for. And here he was, unable to provide the one thing that mattered. Life. Just a few more days of life for his baby boy. His ex-wife, Catherine, she'd left 2 years ago. Vincent remembered their last conversation. She'd said he was always working, always distant, always choosing business over family. He'd thought she was being dramatic, unreasonable. Didn't she understand he was doing it all for them? For their future? Now, standing in that hospital room watching Oliver's tiny chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance, Vincent finally understood what Catherine had been trying to tell him. Success without someone to share it with is just loneliness wearing an expensive suit. Achievement without love is just an empty trophy case. He'd built an empire but lost his family in the process. It was day 2 when everything changed. Vincent was in Oliver's room making another desperate phone call to yet another medical institute, this time in Germany. His voice was hoarse from explaining the situation over and over. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. He hadn't eaten in 24 hours, couldn't even think about food. That's when the door opened. A woman walked in wearing a bright blue custodian uniform with a white apron. She carried yellow cleaning gloves and pushed a cart of supplies. She looked to be in her late 20s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile that seemed out of place in this room of despair. Her name tag read, Eleanor Hayes. Eleanor took 3 steps into the room, saw Oliver lying there with all those tubes and wires, and she just stopped. Her hand went to her chest, right over her heart, and her eyes filled with something Vincent hadn't seen in days. Compassion. Pure, unfiltered compassion. "Poor little angel," she whispered. Vincent barely glanced at her. "You can clean later," he said sharply. "I need quiet for this call." But Eleanor didn't leave. And what happened next, Vincent would never forget. She walked over to Oliver's bed. She set down her cleaning supplies and removed one of her yellow gloves. Then she did something unexpected, something that made Vincent's phone call fade into background noise. She gently, so very gently, stroked Oliver's small hand. And she began to hum. It was a lullaby, simple and sweet, the kind of melody a mother might sing to help her child fall asleep. In that sterile hospital room filled with the sounds of machines and medical equipment, her humming was like a drop of warmth in an ocean of cold. "Hey there, little warrior," Eleanor said softly to Oliver, as if he could hear her. "You're stronger than you know. You're going to be just fine." "Yes, you are." Vincent ended his call. "Miss," he said, trying to keep the irritation out of his voice and failing. "I appreciate the sentiment, but my son is unconscious. He can't hear you." Eleanor turned to look at Vincent. Her eyes were kind but firm. "He's listening," she said. "They always are." Something in her voice made Vincent pause. There was a certainty there, a conviction that didn't come from medical training or scientific knowledge. It came from somewhere deeper. Over the next few hours, Vincent noticed Eleanor kept coming back. She'd clean quietly, wiping down surfaces, emptying trash bins, mopping the floor. But she'd also talk to Oliver. She'd tell him stories about the sunshine waiting for him outside, about birds flying in the sky, about how the whole world was waiting to meet this brave little boy. That evening, after the nurses had finished their rounds and the hospital had settled into its nighttime rhythm, Vincent found himself asking Eleanor a question he wasn't sure he wanted answered. "Why do you do this?" "Talk to him like he can actually hear you." Eleanor was adjusting Oliver's blanket, making sure he was comfortable. She looked at Vincent with those kind eyes and smiled sadly. "Because he can, Mr. Ashford. He really can." She pulled up a chair and sat down. "When I was 16 years old, my little brother was in a terrible accident. He was in a coma for 6 weeks. 6 long weeks of doctors telling my family to prepare for the worst. They said he'd never wake up. That even if he did, he'd never be the same." Vincent found himself leaning forward, listening. "But you know what I did?" Eleanor continued. "I talked to him every single day. I'd sit by his bed after school and tell him about my day, about the weather, about our dog waiting for him at home. I'd sing to him. I'd hold his hand. I'd pray. And you know what happened?" "What?" Vincent whispered. He woke up. On day 42, his eyes opened. And the first thing he said was that he'd heard me. Every word. Every song. Every prayer. He said my voice was what guided him back. Vincent felt something stir in his chest. Something he'd thought was dead. Hope. Fragile, terrifying hope. "What exactly did you do? I mean, besides talk to him?" Eleanor's answer was so simple it almost hurt. "I loved him, Mr. Ashford. That's all. I held his hand. I sang to him. I prayed over him. Sometimes that's all we have. Love and faith." Vincent scoffed, though even to his own ears it sounded hollow. "I've hired the best doctors in the world. 15 specialists. I've spent millions on treatments and tests. Love isn't going to cure a neurological condition." Eleanor met his eyes, and in that moment, Vincent saw something in her that humbled him. Wisdom. Deep, unshakable wisdom. "Maybe not," she said quietly. "But it might give him a reason to fight. Science can keep a body alive, Mr. Ashford. But love. Love gives a soul a reason to stay." Vincent sat back in his chair, his mind racing. For years, decades even, he'd believed that every problem had a solution if you threw enough resources at it. Enough money. Enough expertise. Enough determination. But here was this woman, this hospital custodian in a blue uniform, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the answer wasn't about money at all. That night, after Eleanor had left to continue her rounds, Vincent sat beside Oliver's bed. He looked at his son's peaceful face, at the tubes helping him breathe, at the monitors tracking every heartbeat. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Vincent didn't make a phone call, didn't send an email, didn't search for another specialist. Instead, he reached out and took his son's small hand in his own. It was so tiny, so fragile. And he did something he hadn't done since Oliver was born. He talked to him. Really talked to him. "Hey, buddy," Vincent whispered, his voice cracking. "It's Dad. I know I haven't been around much. I know I've been working when I should have been playing with you. But I'm here now. And I need you to fight, Oliver. I need you to be strong." The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Oliver didn't move. But Vincent kept talking anyway, kept holding his hand. Because maybe, just maybe, Eleanor was right. Maybe his son could hear him after all. And maybe love, the one thing Vincent had forgotten how to give, was the one thing that could bring his son back. Day 3 arrived like a weight crushing Vincent's chest. He hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Dr. Peterson's face delivering that death sentence. 4 days. Well, now it was down to 2. Maybe 1. Maybe hours. Vincent Ashford, the man who commanded empires, who never showed weakness in boardrooms, who'd built billions through sheer will and determination, was completely and utterly broken. He'd tried everything. Made calls to experimental treatment centers in 5 countries. Offered to fund entire research programs if they'd just look at Oliver's case. He'd even reached out to Catherine, his ex-wife, begging her to come to the hospital. She'd said she couldn't, that seeing Oliver like this would destroy her. Vincent understood. He was being destroyed too, piece by piece, hour by hour. Late that night, around 2 in the morning, a nurse found Vincent in the hallway outside Oliver's room. He wasn't standing tall and confident like the billionaire the world knew. He was sitting on the cold linoleum floor, his back against the wall, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs he'd been holding back for days. He didn't even hear Eleanor approach. She'd finished her shift hours ago, should have been on the bus heading home to her small apartment across town. But she'd stayed. Something told her to stay. "Mr. Ashford?" Her voice was soft, gentle. Vincent looked up, and he didn't care that she saw his tears. Didn't care that his face was red and his eyes were swollen. What did pride matter when your child was dying? "I'm losing him," Vincent choked out. The words felt like glass in his throat. "I built everything. Everything. So my family would never want for anything. And now I can't save my own son. What kind of father am I? What kind of man builds an empire, but can't protect his own child?" Eleanor didn't say anything at first. She just sat down beside him on that cold hospital floor, her blue uniform pooling around her. 2 people from completely different worlds, sitting together in shared grief. "You're the kind of father who loves him," Eleanor said finally. "And that's what matters, Mr. Ashford. That's what's always mattered." "It's not enough," Vincent whispered. "Love isn't enough." Eleanor turned to look at him, and there was something fierce in her eyes now. Something determined. "Then let me help you. Let me help both of you." That's when Eleanor made Vincent a promise that would change everything. She told him she'd stay with Oliver around the clock. Not during her shift. Not when she was being paid. All the time. Every moment. She'd be there. Vincent immediately tried to refuse. Tried to calculate what that would cost, what he should pay her. "I'll compensate you, of course. Name your price. 50,000? 100,000 for the week." "No." Eleanor's voice was firm but kind. "This isn't about money, Mr. Ashford. I'm not doing this for payment. I'm doing this because every child deserves to be fought for. Every child deserves to have someone believe in them when everyone else has given up. And right now, that little boy in there needs us to believe." So they kept vigil together. Eleanor and Vincent. The custodian and the billionaire. And Eleanor began to teach Vincent things that no business school had ever covered. She showed him how to hold Oliver's hand properly. Not just touching it, but really holding it, with warmth and intention. She taught him how to massage Oliver's tiny arms and legs, keeping the blood flowing, keeping the muscles active. "Talk to him like he's awake," she instructed. "Tell him about your day, about your dreams, about anything. Let him hear your voice and know you're here." Eleanor would sing lullabies in a voice that seemed to fill that sterile room with something it desperately needed. Warmth. Hope. Life. And slowly, hesitantly at first, Vincent began to do the same. He started telling Oliver stories. Stories about his own childhood, growing up poor in a small apartment with parents who worked 3 jobs between them. Stories about Oliver's grandfather, a man who died before Oliver was born. A man who'd taught Vincent that success meant nothing if you lost yourself along the way. Vincent realized, with a painful clarity, that he'd forgotten that lesson. had buried it under conference calls and stock portfolios and the endless pursuit of more. "You would have loved your grandfather," Vincent whispered to Oliver one night, his hand resting on his son's chest, feeling the gentle rise and fall. "He used to tell me that the richest man isn't the one with the most money. It's the one with the most love. I forgot that, buddy. I forgot what really matters. But you're teaching me. Even now, even like this, you're teaching your old dad what's important." For the first time in years, maybe in his entire adult life, Vincent Ashford wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a CEO or a chairman or a mogul. He was just a father. Just a dad who loved his son more than anything in the world. And that realization, as painful as it was, felt like coming home after being lost for a very long time. Eleanor watched this transformation happen. She saw the walls Vincent had built around his heart begin to crack. She saw the man beneath the money. And she prayed. Oh, how she prayed. Not just for Oliver, but for both of them. For this father and son who were both fighting for their lives in different ways. The morning of day 4 arrived. The day Dr. Peterson had said would likely be Oliver's last. Vincent had been awake all night, unable to look away from his son's face, as if memorizing every feature, every freckle, every eyelash. Eleanor came in at dawn, technically before her shift started. She'd brought coffee for Vincent, which he didn't drink, and a small stuffed bear for Oliver, which she placed gently beside him on the bed. "Good morning, little warrior," Eleanor said softly, her hand resting on Oliver's forehead. "It's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. And we're all here waiting for you." Vincent sat on the other side of the bed, holding Oliver's hand like Eleanor had taught him. He didn't say anything. Couldn't say anything. His throat was too tight with fear and grief and exhaustion. Eleanor began to hum. That same lullaby she'd been singing for days. Her voice was steady and sure, filling the room with a melody that somehow made the machines seem less intrusive, the situation less hopeless. And then it happened. Oliver's fingers twitched. It was so small, so subtle, that Vincent almost thought he'd imagined it. His breath caught in his throat. "Did you?" he started to say. "Sure." Eleanor's eyes went wide. "Wait. Just wait." They both froze, hardly daring to breathe. The machines continued their steady beeping. The monitors showed the same readings they'd shown for days. Nothing had changed. Except everything was about to change. Oliver's eyelids fluttered. Once. Twice. The movement was slight, but it was there. It was real. The machines started beeping faster. Vincent's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Eleanor's hand was still on Oliver's forehead, and she was whispering prayers under her breath. And then those eyes opened. Those beautiful, sparkling eyes that Vincent had been afraid he'd never see again. Oliver looked around the room, his gaze unfocused at first, then clearing. He looked at Eleanor with her gentle smile and kind eyes. Then he turned his head and looked at his father. And Oliver smiled. Vincent's hand shot out to the call button, pressing it frantically. "Nurse! Doctor! Someone please, he's awake! My son is awake!" The hospital room exploded into controlled chaos. Dr. Peterson came running with his entire team. Nurses surrounded the bed, checking vitals, examining monitors, their professional calm giving way to stunned disbelief. "His brain activity," one nurse stammered, staring at the screen. "It's normalizing. The patterns are normalizing. Heart rate stabilizing," another confirmed, her voice shaking. "Blood pressure rising to healthy levels. This is impossible," Dr. Peterson finished, standing frozen at the foot of the bed, staring at the monitors like they were showing him something from another dimension. "This is medically impossible." But there was Oliver, wide awake in his blue pajamas, looking around the room with curious, alert eyes. When he saw Eleanor in her bright blue uniform, he reached out his little hand toward her, making a soft cooing sound. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Vincent, whose face was a mixture of shock, overwhelming relief, and something else. Something that looked like rebirth. Like a man seeing the world clearly for the first time. Over the next 6 hours, Dr. Peterson and his team ran every test imaginable. MRI scans, blood work, neurological assessments. They checked and rechecked, certain their initial diagnosis had been wrong, certain there had been some mistake in the original readings. But there hadn't been. "Mr. Ashford," Dr. Peterson said, removing his glasses for the second time that week. But this time, his expression wasn't defeat. It was wonder. Pure, unfiltered wonder. 3 days ago, your son's brain showed severe deterioration. Multiple systems were failing. The scans were clear. The prognosis was definitive. And now, Vincent's voice was barely a whisper. Now we're seeing a complete reversal. A total reversal. His brain activity is normal. His organs are functioning properly. Every system that was shutting down has recovered. Dr. Peterson shook his head slowly. I've been practicing medicine for 32 years. I've seen remarkable recoveries. I've seen patients beat long odds. But this? What we're seeing in your son? I've never seen anything like this. It's a miracle, Mr. Ashford. There's no other word for it. So he's going to be okay? Vincent's voice cracked on the last word. More than okay. If these readings hold steady for the next few days, he'll make a full recovery. Complete and total. Dr. Peterson struggled to find words. It's impossible. But it's happening. Vincent turned to thank Eleanor, to tell her what she'd done, what she'd given him. But she had quietly slipped out of the room during the examination, gone back to her duties like this was just another day. Like she hadn't just witnessed the impossible. Vincent found her in the hallway, gathering her cleaning supplies to continue her rounds. She was crying softly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, her yellow gloves still on. Eleanor. She turned, and when she saw Vincent, her face broke into a radiant smile that lit up the entire corridor. He's going to be okay, she said, her voice thick with emotion. That beautiful little boy is going to be okay. Because of you, Vincent said, taking a step closer. His own eyes were wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. You saved him when 15 specialists couldn't. How? How did you do it? Eleanor shook her head firmly. I didn't do anything special, Mr. Ashford. I just loved him. That's all. Sometimes that's the medicine doctors forget to prescribe. Love. Hope. Faith. The belief that miracles can happen if we just hold on long enough to see them. Let me pay you, Vincent said. Please. Name any amount. Anything you want. A house. A car. $1 million. 10 million. You gave me back my son. You gave me back my life. No. Eleanor's voice was gentle but absolutely firm. I didn't do this for money. I did it because every child deserves to be fought for. Every child deserves to be loved unconditionally. Every child deserves to have someone believe in them when everyone else has given up. That's not something you pay for, Mr. Ashford. That's something you give freely from the heart. Vincent stared at this woman in the bright blue uniform with the white apron and those kind, wise eyes. This hospital custodian who had given his son what all his billions couldn't buy. A reason to live. A reason to fight. The power of unconditional love. The doctors insisted on keeping Oliver for observation, but every day he grew stronger. Every day he became more like the happy, curious toddler he'd been before the illness struck. And every day, during her breaks, Eleanor would come to visit. She'd bring simple toys, nothing expensive, just colorful blocks and soft animals from the hospital gift shop. And every time Oliver saw her blue uniform, his entire face would light up like she was the most important person in the world. Vincent watched these interactions, and the transformation inside him continued. He started to understand something fundamental. True wealth had nothing to do with bank accounts or stock portfolios. True wealth was measured in moments. In smiles. In the feeling of a small hand holding yours. In the sound of a child's laughter. In the kindness of a stranger who became family. 3 weeks after Oliver had opened his eyes, Dr. Peterson signed the discharge papers with a smile. Take him home, Mr. Ashford. He's completely healthy. What happened here? It's going to be studied for years. Medical journals will write about this case. But between you and me, some things can't be explained by science. Some things just are. Vincent had arranged everything for Oliver's homecoming. A private car with a specialized child seat. The best pediatric care specialist money could hire. A nursery redesigned with every safety feature and educational toy available. Everything Ethan could possibly need. But as the staff wheeled Oliver out in a hospital wheelchair, just as a precaution for the trip to the car, Vincent stopped in the middle of the hallway. Something was wrong. No, not wrong exactly. Something was missing. Wait here, he told his assistant, handing him the wheelchair handles. Vincent practically ran through the hospital corridors. He found Eleanor just as she was ending her shift, walking toward the bus stop in her blue uniform, carrying her worn bag over her shoulder. Grace, wait, he called out. She turned, surprised to see him running toward her, this billionaire in his expensive suit, chasing down a custodian. Vincent reached her, slightly out of breath. I wanted to thank you. Properly. Ethan wouldn't be alive without you. I wouldn't be, he he paused, searching for the right words. I wouldn't be who I am now without you. Eleanor smiled warmly. He's a fighter, Mr. Ashford. He just needed someone to believe in him. So did I, Vincent admitted. These past weeks, watching you, learning from you, you showed me what I'd forgotten. What matters? Who I want to be. Who I need to be for my son. He took a deep breath. I'm setting up a foundation. Full scholarships for people who want to go into medicine but can't afford it. People like you, who have the heart for it, who understand that healing is about more than just science. And I'd like you to help me run it. Not as an employee. As a partner. If you'll consider it. Eleanor's eyes widened in shock. Mr. Ashford, Vincent, he corrected gently. Please. Just Vincent. Vincent, I don't know what to say. I'm just You're the woman who saved my son's life, Vincent interrupted. But before you answer, there's someone who wants to say goodbye. He gestured toward the hospital entrance where his assistant was pushing the wheelchair out. Oliver was sitting in it, looking around with bright, curious eyes. The moment he saw Eleanor, his whole face transformed. Pure joy. He started reaching for her, making those happy sounds that toddlers make when they see someone they love. Eleanor dropped to her knees right there on the pavement, pulling off her yellow cleaning gloves, tears streaming down her face. She opened her arms wide. And Oliver, with that determination that only children have, scrambled out of the wheelchair before anyone could stop him. His father knelt behind the chair, watching, his own face wet with tears. Vincent's hands went to his head in a gesture of overwhelming emotion. Not distress this time. Gratitude. Awe. Joy so profound it hurt. Oliver toddled toward Eleanor in his blue pajamas, barefoot on the warm pavement, his auburn hair catching the afternoon sunlight. He reached her and grabbed her hands with his small fingers. Eleanor lifted him gently, carefully, hugging him close. You did it, little warrior, she whispered into his hair. You did it. You're so strong. So brave. So loved. Vincent stood, wiping his eyes, not caring that hospital staff were watching, that there were people recording on their phones, that the great Vincent Ashford was crying openly on a public street. He walked over to Eleanor and Oliver, and he looked at this woman who had given him back his son, who had given him back himself. So, he said, his voice rough with emotion, will you help me? Help us. Eleanor looked at Oliver, who was playing with her uniform collar, perfectly content in her arms. Then she looked at Vincent, and she saw something she hadn't seen 3 weeks ago. She saw a father, a real father, not a billionaire hiding behind money and power, just a man who loved his son and wanted to be better. On one condition, Eleanor said. Name it. Anything. You spend every evening with this little boy. No phones. No business calls. No emails or meetings. Just you and him. Playing. Reading. Being together. Because that's the real miracle, Vincent. Not that he survived. That's wonderful. That's extraordinary. But the real miracle is that you both get a second chance. A chance to build a relationship. A chance to be present. A chance to remember what matters. She shifted Oliver in her arms, and the toddler reached out to his father, wanting both of them. Don't waste it. Don't go back to who you were. Stay who you're becoming. Because this little boy needs his father. Not his father's money. Not his father's success. Just his father. Vincent felt tears streaming down his face, and he didn't wipe them away. He let them fall. Let everyone see. Because for the first time in his adult life, he wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. Wasn't afraid to show his heart. Deal, he whispered. Then louder, with certainty, with commitment. Deal. Eleanor smiled and handed Oliver to Vincent. Father and son embraced, and Vincent held his boy close, feeling the warmth of him, the life of him, the miracle of him. Thank you, Vincent said to Eleanor. For everything. For believing when I couldn't. For loving him when I'd forgotten how. For teaching me that some things can't be bought. They can only be given. Eleanor picked up her bag, ready to head home after a very long, very extraordinary few weeks. You're welcome, Vincent. Take care of each other. As she walked toward the bus stop, Vincent called out one more time. Eleanor. Monday morning. 9 a.m. We have a foundation to build. She turned back, smiled, and nodded. I'll be there. Vincent carried Oliver to the waiting car, but before he got in, he paused. He looked up at the sky, at the sun shining down, at the world that suddenly seemed more beautiful than he'd ever noticed. He thought about the past 3 weeks. About how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. About how a woman in a blue uniform had taught him that the greatest wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was in moments like this, holding his son, feeling his heartbeat, knowing they had tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. The real miracle wasn't just that Oliver had survived. It was that Vincent Ashford had learned what it meant to truly live. To love without holding back. To be present instead of distracted. To measure success not in dollars, but in the smile of a child who knew his father was there, really there. And as Vincent drove home with Oliver singing nonsense songs in his car seat, he made himself a promise. He would never forget. Never go back to the man who valued empire over family. Never lose sight of what really mattered. Because sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what you actually have. And sometimes it takes a humble hospital custodian to remind a billionaire that the best things in life aren't things at all. They're love, their faith, their second chances, and they're absolutely, wonderfully, miraculously free.